The Grand Assembly Hall of Station Orivas was the largest room Una Park had ever seen. It stretched upward for what felt like forever, with seats carved into walls that curved like the inside of a giant shell. Thousands of delegates filled those seats. Some had scales, some had wings, some floated in tanks of liquid or hovered inside energy fields. The air smelled strange, like metal and flowers and something burning far away. Una stood at the back of the hall with her small team. Taeho Kang was on her left, standing straight in his military uniform. His eyes moved across the room, watching everything, trusting nothing. On her right was Hana Lee, who held a small device that translated the dozens of alien languages being spoken around them. Humanity had joined the Galactic Council only 3 cycles ago. In council time, that was nothing. Some of the species here had been members for 10,000 years. They had built empires while humans were still learning to make fire. No one looked at the human delegation. No one cared. The current debate was about the Velthari expansion. Una had studied the reports for months. The Velthari were a conquering species. They moved slowly across the galaxy, taking world after world. They did not kill everyone. That would be wasteful. Instead, they took resources, destroyed governments, and left the survivors to suffer in poverty. The worlds they touched never recovered. Right now, the Velthari were pushing into the outer rim. Dozens of small worlds were in their path. Some had already fallen. Refugees were flooding into neutral space, telling stories of burning cities and families torn apart. Una watched the council debate. The Mulvari delegate spoke first. The Mulvari were made of living crystal. Their bodies caught the light and scattered it into rainbows. They were beautiful, and they were old beyond imagination. The delegate spoke about economics. War was expensive, the delegate explained. Intervention would disrupt trade routes. The council should wait and see how the situation developed. Next came the Thesson representative. The Thesson were tall and thin, with bodies like insects and faces that showed no emotion. They spoke about treaties. The Velthari had signed agreements with the council long ago. Those agreements allowed for territorial expansion under certain conditions. The Thesson argued that the Velthari were technically following the rules. Other delegates spoke. Some expressed concern. Some offered sympathy. None offered help. In the gallery above, Una could see refugees watching. A mother held her child close. An old man stared at nothing, his eyes empty. They had traveled across the stars to beg for help, and they were watching the most powerful beings in the galaxy discuss paperwork. Taeho leaned close to Una. "This is pointless," he whispered. "They will do nothing." Una did not answer. She was thinking about something her grandmother had told her once. Back on Earth, her grandmother had survived the war. She had seen what happened when powerful nations decided that someone else's suffering was not their problem. Hana touched Una's arm. "Ambassador, you have the right to request speaking time. As a member species, we can address the council." "How much time?" Una asked. 3 minutes. It is the standard allowance for new members. Taeho shook his head. "They will not listen. We are nothing to them. Our fleet is small. Our history is short. They see us as children." Una looked at the refugees in the gallery. The mother was crying now, trying to hide her tears from her child. "Request the floor," Una said. Hana sent the request through the proper channels. A moment later, the council chair acknowledged it. The chair was a being called a Vorath, a creature of pure energy contained in a mechanical shell. Its voice boomed through the hall. "The delegate from Earth requests speaking time. This is unusual for such a new member. However, the request is within protocol. Earth is granted 3 minutes." Laughter rippled through parts of the hall. Not all species laughed the same way. Some made sounds. Some flashed colors. Some released chemical signals that Una's translator interpreted as amusement. But the meaning was clear. They thought it was funny that the infant species wanted to speak. Yuna walked toward the central platform. It was a long walk. The platform floated in the middle of the hall, surrounded by empty space. A beam of light would carry her there. She stepped into the light and felt herself lifted, carried forward, placed gently on the platform. She was alone now, standing in the center of the galaxy's most powerful assembly. Every eye, every sensor, every form of perception was focused on her. She was a small human woman in a simple black suit, surrounded by beings that could destroy her planet without effort. Her heart was pounding. Her hands wanted to shake. She did not let them. She thought about what she wanted to say. She had prepared remarks, careful diplomatic words designed not to offend anyone. She looked at those words on her tablet, then put the tablet away. She looked up at the refugees in the gallery instead. The mother had stopped crying. She was watching Yuna with something in her eyes. It might have been hope. It might have been despair. It was hard to tell the difference sometimes. Yuna took a breath. "My name is Yuna Park," she said. "I speak for Earth. I speak for humanity. And I will not waste my 3 minutes on politeness." The hall went quiet. Even the whispered conversations stopped. No one had expected that. Teho, watching from the back, allowed himself a small smile. He had known Yuna for 15 years. He had seen that look on her face before. It was the look she got when she had decided to do something that everyone told her was impossible. This was going to be interesting. Yuna stood on the platform and let the silence grow. She had learned long ago that silence could be a weapon. It made people uncomfortable. It made them listen. "You call us young," she said. "You are correct. Humanity has existed for a tiny moment compared to your great civilizations. We have not built empires that span 1,000 stars. We have not developed technology that bends space and time. By your standards, we are children who have just learned to walk." She paused. The translator carried her words to every corner of the hall, converting them into languages and signals that each species could understand. "But I want to tell you about children," she continued. "On Earth, there is a city called Gwangju. 40 years before we reached the stars, something happened there. The government sent soldiers to crush the people. They sent tanks and guns against ordinary citizens. And do you know what those citizens did?" No one answered. They were listening now. They stood up. Students, workers, grandmothers. They built barricades. They faced the tanks with their bare hands. Many of them died. But they did not run. They did not hide. They stood up because they believed that some things are worth dying for. The Mulvari delegate shifted uncomfortably. The crystalline body made a sound like wind chimes in a storm. "On Earth, we have a long history of this," Yuna said. "We are not a peaceful species. We have fought terrible wars against each other. We have done horrible things, but we have also done something else. Again and again, throughout our history, ordinary people have stood up against impossible odds. Not because they thought they would win, but because they could not live with themselves if they did not try." She turned slowly, looking at different sections of the hall. "You have been watching the Velthari expansion for decades. You have written reports. You have held meetings. You have expressed concern. And while you debated, millions of people lost their homes. Millions lost their families. Millions died." Her voice was harder now. "I have read your treaties. I have studied your laws. I understand that the Velthari are technically operating within the boundaries you have set. But I also understand something else. Those laws were written by the powerful to protect the powerful. They were never meant to protect the weak." The Thessan representative stood up. "The delegate from Earth speaks out of turn. She is making accusations against this council." The council chair's mechanical voice cut through the interruption. "The delegate has time remaining. She may continue." Yuna nodded to the chair. "Thank you. I will be brief." She looked up at the gallery where the refugees sat. The mother was holding her child so tightly now that it must have hurt. But the child was not crying. The child was watching Yuna with wide eyes. On Earth, we have another tradition. When there is a storm at sea and a ship is sinking, we send boats to rescue the survivors. We do not ask first if the sinking ship can pay us. We do not check if the survivors have the right documents. We do not debate whether helping them will hurt our economy. We send the boats because people are dying, and we cannot watch them die without trying to help. She straightened her back. I came to this council hoping to find allies. I came hoping that somewhere in this galaxy, there were species who shared our belief that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. I see now that I was wrong. Angry murmurs spread through the hall. Several delegates began to speak at once. I am not finished, Yuna said, and something in her voice silenced them. My 3 minutes are almost over. So I will say this clearly, so there is no misunderstanding. If this council will not act to stop the Velthari, then Earth will act alone. The hall exploded with noise. Delegates shouted. Warning lights flashed on translation devices that could not keep up with the chaos. The Velthari ambassador, a creature wrapped in dark armor, rose from its seat and pointed at Yuna with a limb that ended in something like a blade. Yuna did not move. She stood on the platform and waited. The council chair called for order. It took several minutes for the noise to die down. The delegate from Earth has made a serious statement, the chair said. Does she understand the implications? Earth's military forces are minimal. A conflict with the Velthari would result in Earth's destruction. Yuna smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone who had made peace with a terrible choice. I understand perfectly, she said. We are a small species with a small fleet and a short history. The Velthari could crush us easily. And maybe they will. But I want you all to understand something about humans. She looked around the hall one more time. We do not measure victory by survival. We measure it by whether we did what was right. And when the history of this moment is written, it will show that Earth stood up while empires sat in comfortable silence. She stepped back into the beam of light. It carried her off the platform and back to where Tejo and Hana were waiting. Behind her, the hall was still in chaos. But in the gallery above, something had changed. The refugees were standing. They were looking at the human delegation with something new in their eyes. It was not just hope. It was recognition. They had found someone who understood. And in the seats reserved for minor species, delegates were looking at each other and whispering. Seeds were being planted. No one knew it yet. But the galaxy was about to change. The emergency session lasted for 6 hours. Yuna sat through all of it, watching the council tear itself apart over what she had said. The Velthari ambassador demanded that Earth be punished. The human delegation had threatened military action without council approval. This was a violation of membership agreements. Earth should be expelled, sanctioned, isolated from galactic trade. The major powers agreed. The Mulvari called for immediate economic restrictions. The Thessan proposed stripping Earth of voting rights. The Vorath chair warned that reckless behavior endangered galactic stability. Yuna listened to it all without expression. Beside her, Tejo's jaw was tight with anger, but he stayed silent. Hana kept translating, her voice steady even as she delivered insult after insult. Then something unexpected happened. A delegate from a species Yuna did not recognize rose from a seat in the far corner of the hall. The creature was small, no larger than a human child, covered in soft gray fur. It had 4 arms and eyes that reflected light like mirrors. The council recognizes the delegate from the Rin Collective, the chair announced. The Rin delegate spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. The Rin Collective has been a member of this council for 300 cycles. In that time, we have never addressed the full assembly. We are a small people. We have learned that small people should be quiet and careful. The delegate paused. But today, we heard something different. Today, we heard a species even younger than us Say what we have been too afraid to say. The Velthari took our outer colonies 40 cycles ago. We begged this council for help. We were told to be patient. We were told that intervention was not practical. The Rin delegate walked down from its seat and crossed the floor of the assembly hall. Every eye followed it. When it reached the human delegation, it stopped and turned to face the council. The Rin collective stands with Earth. The hall erupted again. But this time, the chaos had a different quality. Other delegates were moving now. A tall being wrapped in flowing fabric descended from the upper tiers. It was a Dorvani, a member of a species that had survived genocide long ago at the hands of an empire that no longer existed. The Dorvani had never forgotten what it felt like to be hunted. The Dorvani Republic stands with Earth. More delegates rose. The Alathi, an aquatic species that lived in sealed environment suits. The Korsu, beings of living metal, who had been mining resources for larger empires for centuries. The Vathani, distant cousins of the Velthari, who had refused to join the expansion and been cast out. They crossed the floor and stood with the human delegation. By the end of the hour, 17 species had joined them. The Mulvari delegate's crystalline body flickered with agitation. This is unprecedented. This is disorder. These minor species have no authority to form an independent coalition. The Vorath chair consulted its records. Actually, under Section 447 of the Council Charter, any group of 5 or more member species may form a mutual defense agreement without Council approval. It is an old provision, rarely used. It was meant for emergencies. The Thesson representative protested. The Rin delegate looked at the Thesson with those mirror eyes. What do you think this is? 3 days later, Una stood on the bridge of the Earth carrier Horizon. The ship was not impressive by galactic standards. It was 300 meters long, carried a crew of 2,000, and mounted weapons that most advanced species considered outdated. But it was the flagship of the human fleet, and it was heading to war. Commander Minho Bake met her at the door. He was a tall man with gray at his temples and calm eyes that had seen combat before. "Ambassador," he said. "Welcome aboard." "Thank you, Commander. I wish we were meeting under better circumstances." Minho led her to the command center. His senior officers were waiting. Unji Cho, a woman with short hair and a tactical display projected in front of her. Ji-Hoon Seo, a quiet man who ran intelligence operations. And Sora Yoon, the chief engineer, whose hands were stained with machine oil. "Show her the numbers," Minho said. Ji-Hoon activated a holographic display. It showed the outer rim, the Velthari fleet positions, and the Allied forces. "The Velthari have 800 warships in the region," Ji-Hoon said. "Their command vessel is here, in the Hollow Sun system. They are preparing to attack the refugee world of Keth 4. "And our forces?" Una asked. 47 Earth ships, 63 ships from our allies, total of 110 vessels. Una did the math. They were outnumbered more than 7 to 1. "It is not enough," she said quietly. Minho nodded. "No." Unji looked up from her display. "Ambassador, I have been studying Velthari tactics for months. They fight like machines. They calculate acceptable losses. They never take risks. They have never faced an enemy willing to die rather than retreat. What are you suggesting?" Unji's eyes were hard. "I am suggesting that we teach them something new," Sora spoke up. "The engines can be pushed past their limits. It will burn them out, but we can get more speed when we need it." Ji-Hoon added, "Their command structure is centralized. If we can reach their flagship, we can create chaos." Minho looked at Una. "Ambassador, I cannot promise victory. I cannot even promise survival. But I can promise you this. The Velthari will remember us. Whatever happens, they will remember what humans are willing to do." 7. Now, Una thought about the refugees on Keth 4. She thought about the mother holding her child in the gallery. She thought about everyone who had ever stood up against impossible odds, because it was the right thing to do. Then let us give them something to remember, she said. The fleet jumped to light speed. The Battle of Hollow Sun was about to begin. The Hollow Sun was a dying star. It burned with a dull red light that made everything look like it was covered in blood. Around it orbited the world of Keth 4, where 3 million refugees waited to learn if they would live or die. The Velthari fleet hung in space between the star and the planet. 800 ships arranged in perfect formation, blocking any escape. They had done this many times before. They knew how to wait. They knew that eventually, the small fleet approaching them would see the numbers, understand the mathematics of death, and retreat. They were wrong. Minho stood at the center of the Horizon's bridge. The holographic display showed enemy positions, weapon ranges, and casualty projections. The projections were not encouraging. They are not moving, Unji reported. They expect us to stop. Then let us disappoint them, Minho said. All ships. Increase speed. Attack formation. Across the Allied fleet, captains received the order with mixed reactions. The Rin commander asked for confirmation. The Dorvani captain laughed and said it was good day for impossible things. The human ships simply obeyed. The fleet accelerated toward the Velthari line. Ji-hun watched his intelligence feeds. Their command ship is in the center of their formation. It is the largest vessel, heavily shielded. They call it the Voice of Conquest. A proud name, Minho said. Let us see if we can silence it. The first Velthari weapons fired when the Allied fleet entered maximum range. The Allied ships were faster and smaller, harder to hit. But the sheer volume of fire was overwhelming. 3 Elathi frigates exploded in the first minute. A Corsu cruiser lost its engines and drifted away from the battle, helpless. Return fire, Yunji ordered. Focus on their forward ships. Create a gap. Human weapons were less advanced than Velthari systems, but they were not gentle. Missiles designed to crack asteroids slammed into enemy hulls. Laser cannons burned through armor. The horizon shook with each shot it fired, the old ship straining to deliver every bit of destruction it could. The Velthari had not expected this. Their calculations had predicted a brief exchange of fire followed by retreat. Instead, the Allied fleet was diving into their formation, taking losses, but refusing to stop. They are adjusting, Ji-hun reported, closing the gap we created. They will surround us in 4 minutes. Minho nodded. Then, we have 4 minutes to reach their command ship. Sora's voice came through the internal communication system. Commander, I can give you more engine power, but the core will overheat. We will have maybe 10 minutes before total failure. Do it. The horizon surged forward, moving faster than any ship its size should move. The Rin and Dorvani vessels followed, their own engineers pushing beyond safe limits. They punched through the Velthari formation like a fist through paper. Behind them, the rest of the Allied fleet fought a desperate holding action. Ships were dying, but they were buying time. Every second counted. Unji's voice was steady despite the chaos. Voice of Conquest is in range. They are raising additional shields. Their defensive batteries are targeting us. All weapons on that ship, Minho ordered. Everything we have. The Horizon unleashed its full arsenal. The Rin ships added their precision lasers. The Dorvani fired ancient weapons that had been designed to kill gods. For a moment, space around the Voice of Conquest turned white with destruction. When the light faded, the command ship was damaged but still functioning. Its shields had held. Shields at 40% and rising, Ji-hun said. They are regenerating. We cannot break through. Minho stared at the enemy ship. He had known this might happen. He had planned for it. Sora. What is our engine status? Sora. What is our engine status? Core temperature is critical. We have maybe 5 minutes before meltdown. That will be enough. Minho opened a channel to the entire ship. All hands, This is the commander. Abandon ship. Get to the escape pods. That is an order. The bridge crew stared at him. Unji was the first to understand. Her face went pale. Commander! No. There is not. Minho's voice was gentle but final. I am going to ram. The voice of conquest. At full speed, with our engines about to explode, I will hit them with enough force to break their shields and destroy their command structure. It is suicide, Ji-hoon said. It is victory. Without their command ship, the Valkyrie fleet will lose coordination. They will hesitate. That hesitation will save Keth 4. Minho looked at each of them in turn. I need you to survive. Someone has to tell the story. Someone has to make sure this meant something. Unji wiped her eyes. She was not the kind of woman who cried easily. It will mean something, I promise. Go. The crew evacuated. Minho stayed at the helm. He watched the escape pods launch, carrying his people to safety. He watched the voice of conquest grow larger in his viewport. He thought about his family back on Earth. He thought about the choice he had made. He felt afraid, but he also felt at peace. Some prices were worth paying. This is Commander Minho Bake of the Earth Carrier Horizon, he said into the open channel. To the Valkyrie. You wanted to know what humans are capable of. Now you will learn. Now. 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 He pushed the engines to maximum. The ship screamed. Warning alarms filled the bridge with noise and light. The horizon hit the voice of conquest at a speed that turned both ships into a small sun. The explosion was visible from the surface of Keth 4, where millions of refugees watched and waited. When the light faded, the Valkyrie command ship was gone, and with it, the coordination of the entire enemy fleet. The Battle of Hollow Sun continued for 3 more hours. But without orders from their commanders, the Valkyrie ships began to retreat, one by one, then in groups, then in a flood. For the first time in 200 years, a Valkyrie fleet had lost. On the surface of Keth 4, the refugees looked up at the stars and saw Allied ships entering orbit. They were safe. They did not know yet what it had cost. But they would learn. And they would remember the name of the man who had given everything so they could live. 30 cycles passed. In that time, everything changed. The Valkyrie expansion collapsed like a house built on sand. Without their central command, their fleets could not coordinate. The conquered worlds sensed weakness and began to resist. Species that had been slaves for generations rose up and fought back. The Valkyrie retreated to their home systems, their empire shrinking with each passing cycle. The alliance that Earth had built grew stronger. What had started as a desperate coalition of minor species became a permanent organization. They called themselves the Compact of Free Worlds. 17 species had stood together at Hollow Sunday. Now there were 43. The Galactic Council watched all of this with growing concern. The old powers had ruled for millennia by keeping smaller species divided and afraid. Now those species had learned that they did not have to be afraid anymore. Unipark returned to Station Orivas for the council session that would decide humanity's future. She walked through the same corridor she had walked 30 cycles ago. But everything felt different now. Delegates who had ignored her before stopped to greet her. Some even bowed. Teho was not with her this time. He had died defending a refugee transport during the final battles of the war. His body had been recovered and returned to Earth, where he was buried with full honors. Yuna still thought about him every day. Hana Lee walked beside her instead. The translator had become something more than a translator now. She was Yuna's advisor, her friend, and the keeper of the stories they had lived through together. Are you ready? Hana asked. Yuna thought about it. I do not know if anyone is ever ready for something like this, but I will do my best. The Grand Assembly Hall was full. Every seat was occupied. Every delegation was present. The air hummed with tension and anticipation. Something historic was about to happen, and everyone knew it. Yuna walked to the central platform. This time, no one laughed. The beam of light carried her to the center of the hall, and she stood there alone, just as she had 30 cycles ago. But she was not the same person she had been then. She had seen war, she had lost friends, she had watched good people die for a cause they believed in. Those experiences had changed her in ways she was still discovering. The council chair called the session to order. We are gathered to discuss the formal status of Earth within the Galactic Council. Recent events have demonstrated that humanity's role in galactic affairs has grown beyond what anyone expected. The major powers have proposed granting Earth a permanent seat on the High Council. Murmurs spread through the hall. A permanent seat on the High Council meant real power. It meant humanity would help make decisions that affected the entire galaxy. Before we proceed, the chair continued, the delegate from Earth has requested time to address the assembly. Yuna stepped forward. Thank you. She looked around the hall, remembering how small she had felt the first time she stood here. She did not feel small anymore. 30 cycles ago, I stood on this platform and made a choice. I chose to speak when I was supposed to be silent. I chose to act when I was told to wait. I chose to risk everything because I believed it was right. She paused. That choice cost us dearly. We lost ships. We lost soldiers. We lost friends. Commander Minho Bake gave his life to break the Velthari fleet. Thousands of others died beside him. I think about them every day. I wonder if I made the right decision. I wonder if there was another way. The hall was silent. Even the beings who had no equivalent of breathing seemed to be holding their breath. But then I think about Keth 4. I think about the 3 million refugees who are alive today because someone chose to fight for them. I think about the worlds that have been liberated, the families that have been reunited, the children who will grow up free instead of enslaved. She straightened her back. And I know that we made the right choice. Not because it was easy, not because it was safe, but because it was right. The Mulvari delegate rose. The crystalline being had opposed Earth at every turn. Yuna expected another attack, another demand for caution and restraint. Instead, the Mulvari spoke words that surprised everyone. The delegate from Earth speaks truth. We Mulvari have lived for a very long time. We have seen many species rise and fall. We have learned to be careful, to calculate, to avoid unnecessary risk. We thought this was wisdom. The crystals caught the light, scattering rainbows across the hall. We were wrong. Caution without courage is just another word for cowardice. The humans have reminded us of something we had forgotten. Some things are worth fighting for, regardless of the cost. The Mulvari delegate sat down. Silence followed. The council chair called for a vote on Earth's permanent seat. The result was unanimous. After the session ended, Yuna stood alone on an observation deck, overlooking the station. Stars filled the viewport. Countless points of light, representing worlds she would never visit, and species she would never meet. The universe was vast beyond comprehension. A voice interrupted her thoughts. It was the Mulvari delegate, approaching with careful steps. Ambassador Park, I hope I am not disturbing you. Not at all. I was just thinking. The crystalline being stood beside her. Your species confuses us. You are fragile. You live such short lives. You are often irrational and emotional. By every measure we use to judge civilizations, you should be insignificant. Yuna smiled. And yet here we are. Yes. Here you are. The Mulvari paused. May I ask you something? Of course. How do you do it? How do you face death so easily? How do you sacrifice yourselves for strangers? We have studied your history. You do this again and again. We cannot understand why. 4. Yuna thought about the question. She thought about Minho and Teho and all the others who had given everything. She thought about her grandmother's stories. She thought about what it meant to be human. Because we know we are going to die, she said finally. Every human knows, from childhood, that our time is limited. We cannot live forever. We cannot control the universe. We are small and fragile and temporary. She turned to face the Mulvari, and because of that, we have learned to ask ourselves a question. Not how long will I live, but what will I do with the time I have? Not can I survive this, but is this worth dying for? The Mulvari was silent for a long moment. That is terrifying, it said at last. Yuna nodded. Yes, it is. But it is also liberating. When you accept that death is part of life, you stop being afraid of it. You start asking what matters. And once you know what matters, you will do anything to protect it. She looked back at the stars. That is what makes us human. Not our technology. Not our intelligence. Our willingness to love something so much that we would give up everything for it. That is our strength. That is our gift. And that is why the galaxy will never forget us. The Mulvari had no response. Perhaps there was nothing to say. Yuna stayed on the observation deck until the stars began to blur. Then, she wiped her eyes, straightened her shoulders, and went back to work. There was still so much to do, and she had learned that the best way to honor the dead was to keep fighting for the living. The universe was vast and full of dangers. But humanity had found its place in it. And they were just getting started.